Starting off the week with one from Brian Tyler Cohen here. He clipped a piece of Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking to a crowd full of Republicans and doing, apparently accidentally, an advertisement for Joe Biden in 2024. Good. We've been talking from the jump about strategy, and while this channel does focus a lot on bringing people out of that far right rabbit hole, we're also realistic about 2024. Strategy for winning the House, the White House, and the Senate is going to include reaching centrists and convincing them that normal politics are now left politics. If you are somebody that doesn't follow politics too closely, you just want to make a practical decision, a responsible decision, but you don't want to think about it too much, then your default, vote for the lefty. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene helping us out to make that case.
Lyndon B. Johnson is very similar to Joe Biden. How are they the same? They're both Democrat socialist. Lyndon B. Johnson was the...
I know. She's coming out the gate saying something straight up untrue. Joe Biden is not a Democratic socialist, but let's let her keep going because this is pretty good. And most of what she says is kind of true.
Majority leader in the Senate. Does that sound familiar? He was vice president to Kennedy. Joe was vice president to Obama. He was appointed as the president after JFK was assassinated, then he was elected. His big socialist programs were the Great Society. The Great Society were big government programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and welfare, the Office of Economic Opportunity, and big labor and labor unions. Now, LBJ had the Great Society, but Joe Biden...
Big labor? I know that there is a tendency to put the word big in front of something, to make it seem like it is a corrupt organization of some sort. Here we go. Hey, there we are. Yeah, to put the word big in front of something, to make it seem evil. And that works with big tobacco, that works with big oil, that works with big tech, that works with big banks, that works even with big transportation, big trains, just generally big business. But it doesn't really work for labor. Because when you say big labor, you are referring to what? The laborers. Us. We should have a lot of power. That should be the way this works. She keeps going like this, making such a case. And I just want to comment, I'm pretty sure she did not start looking into how politics works until now, until she's been elected for multiple years. She's pulling out the glasses and having to read these notes because she truly didn't know this stuff, and she is looking to try to frame it now as a bad thing. And the problem is her inexperience is going to show in such a way that people with just a little bit of political knowledge or, experience in the world, actually having dealt with some of these programs, is going to utterly expose her for what she is. Let's just let her keep bearing herself.
Had Build Back Better, and he still is working on it. the largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete: socialism. Meanwhile, we are now $32 trillion in debt, with record high home.
You'll also note you're not really hearing the crowd go wild there. I mean, it's a small thing, but I think that crowd is confused by this. One other thing, I was talking with the True North Eager Beaver fellas, and when we were talking about our least favorite politicians, one of the things we talked about was how, as a person, we do not like, neither of us liked LBJ. But his policies were fantastic. I mean, he had an excellent policy set. Very, very funny to me that she's actually right. There really is some overlap with Joe Biden, even in my own sentiments, with LBJ in that regard. In this case, I don't really have any feelings about Joe Biden as a person. You know, fine. As a person, I like him there. He seems like a fine person. But I didn't support him all that strongly. And his policies are things that I like. They ended up being, I believe he had to get there through being pushed, but still, I mean, end of the day, if you're not splitting hairs and you're just looking at the man's record, one of the best in modern history.
40-year record inflation. We're losing the U.S. dollar as the #1 world currency. We're losing our freedoms. Our government is one big, fat, bloated machine, and it's killing the American dream.
This is Marjorie Taylor Greene warning Americans about all the horrific things that Joe Biden is trying to do as president, like, for example, address problems related to rural poverty, education, and medical care, and do things similar to Lyndon B. Johnson, like passing Medicare and Medicaid, and finish what FDR started, one of the most successful and beloved presidents in the history of this country for his work growing the middle class and fighting for working Americans. Oh, the humanity.
I'm glad he pointed that out, because I should have. Yeah, FDR is one of the most beloved presidents ever. He's one of those. He's almost like John F. Kennedy, where modern Republicans, you know, put him in there with John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King and any other person famously on the left, where Republicans wait a generation and then pretend like what they support now is something that these folks would have been behind. And obviously the answer is no, but it's funny that Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't pick up on that, and that she instead chose to treat FDR, one of the most beloved presidents ever, as though he was a third rail.
Is just a perfect encapsulation of how completely out of touch Republicans are with the average American. Sure, to the right-wing MAGA base that's listening at the event she's speaking at, just the words socialism and Biden are enough to turn them frothing at the mouth, but the average independent voter who watches that clip sees a Republican acting like it is the worst thing in the world that Joe Biden would fight to pass policies that do things like improve education and reduce poverty. And this goes
really want to stress that, first of all, put a pin in that. First of all, I did not hear the folks going wild for her saying those things. But I really want to stress that, yeah, any independent voter that sees that is going to be pushed into the Biden camp. If there is such a thing as an independent still, if there's truly somebody who is making up their mind, they will see that and see, more importantly than what Democrats are for, they'll see what Republicans are against. That's huge.
to a fundamental tenet of right-wing ideology, if you can even call it an ideology anymore. Their entire goal is to fearmonger about the ineffectiveness of government, while they themselves are the ones intentionally breaking government to begin with. Also, they can leverage that to achieve some short-term election win, to scapegoat some minority groups, and to pass laws that give massive tax cuts to billionaires and corporations. But here's the thing, government works when you let it work. That is why programs like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act, all of which were enacted by Democrats, by the way, are so popular. It's why the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the CHIPS and Science Act and other major pieces of legislation signed by Joe Biden have been so successful at creating record job growth while inflation is finally below 3%, a rate far better than most of the rest of the world. Here's another example from the Inflation Reduction Act that I think is a perfect encapsulation of why electing Democrats matters so much. Here's a graph of IRS response times. Because of the Inflation Reduction Act's IRS funding, the IRS was able to provide 87% of customer calls this tax season with live support, up from only 15% last year. The average time on hold decreased from 27 minutes to just 4 minutes. Because of the new IRS funding, Americans are able to get their questions answered quicker, their returns delivered faster, and wealthy tax cheats will finally face more accountability, reducing the tax burden on everyone else while cutting the deficit at the same time.
I mean, so well put. Yeah, there's Marjorie Taylor Greene making an ass of herself and her party. But where was her failure? Because you know what? I don't think you can say she lied. I mean, yeah, all right. She threw that the democratic socialist thing in the beginning. All right, there's one lie. But the rest was just spitting truth. She was saying it like it was a bad thing. But, I mean, it was just facts, and I agree with them. So, what we're going to have here is this happening more and more. One of the downsides one of the many, many downsides to the whole MAGA ideology is that it simply doesn't work. As in like the parts don't line up. The toolkit ain't there for fixing the machine. It does not work, and that means that anybody who knows how politics works, especially in the United States, they're probably not joining up with MAGA. Or to make MAGA happy, they have to pretend like they're going to do things that they just can't do. And when I say it doesn't work, I mean like their answers to things are infinite tax breaks for giant companies, and at the same time lowering taxes. They're just contradictory things. They want absolutely no government control over you, except they want the president to have unquestionable infinite authority. It's this sort of ridiculousness that really gets put on display more and more. And when you have that, you just don't have experienced politicians taking the job because they don't want to make an ass of themselves, like Marjorie Taylor Greene just did. I think we have probably seen the high water mark for MAGA. It's a hell of a bold thing to say, I know, but I think this is the beginning of the long and embarrassing end for this particular party, now, or rather, sect of the Republican Party. Now, we do need to be sure that when they go down, they take the whole of the Republican Party with them. So be sure to point out, and this is all I ask of you, be sure to point out that MAGA is just an exaggeration of the Republican Party, and use this as an opportunity to convince people that see that clip, that the practical thing to do, the responsible thing to do, The thing that reasonable voters do by default is to vote Democrat, because that's true. And you want some more truth? Start spreading this around. Democrats are the conservative choice. The anti-American choice, that's the Republican Party. That's pro-business. It's not even pro-business. That's pro-rich person. It's not conservative anymore. It was only ever nominally conservative. No, the actual people who are slow to change are Democrats. So if you got a conservative, you can make them feel better. You can say, look, your friends won't believe you, but the fact is, Democrats are conservatives. Setting aside conservative or liberal, Democrats are the reasonable choice. They're actually there to do the job they say they're there to do. So that is what you should tell your friends and family when you show them this clip.